have tea.
We have tea.
I love that you wore this summer shirt that I bought you for Christmas. Or was it your birthday?
I think it was my birthday, actually.
Because we celebrate birthdays now.
We do.
Yeah. This is Jeremy Quintana. That's how I got my last name, Quintana, actually.
That's where it comes from.
And so I had already kind of teased on this channel that we were going to do this conversation of Jeremy and I got married very young while we were both still in the religion.
Mostly in the religion.
Do you remember how we met?
Friends of friends. Like at that time, like the assemblies was where you went to meet people. Like for me at my age, I was kind of already had sort of decided like it wasn't for me. I was really bored with everything at that age. But I didn't really have any other friends or was awkward. So, yeah.
I think we were like 8. I think I was 18 or 19 when I met you.
And then I was just a year older, so.
Yeah. I remember I met you the first time. It was at our friend's house that lived in Whittier. And you were like sleeping over at his house. I was sleeping over at his house. We weren't really allowed to have sleepovers at people's houses, other genders, but I guess my parents thought his parents were monitoring our activities. And so there was this kind of like really vibrant party scene happening with the young people in the religion at that time. I remember we would have house parties or like backyard parties, and everybody would come to if they heard you were having a party. It was supposed to be just like for within your congregation, the young people were having a dance party or something. But then people would come from other congregations, and if there was any excuse to have a party, since we didn't celebrate holidays, it would have to be like somebody's anniversary or a graduation or something like that. And we would throw a party, and people would come from all over, and it got really out of hand. Like it started being where like people would come from like all of Southern California to your house party.
I can remember going to other people's, I guess they were called circuits.
Yeah, because the congregations were organized in circuits, and then the circuits were organized into districts.
Right. So when it came to be like assembly time at Dodger Stadium, I would go when it was somebody else's circuit just to meet new people, because that's the only way I knew how to meet people.
Because at 18 or 19, we were realistically panicked that we had limited time to get married.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they were going to think we were having sex without being married, and then we were going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, that's how I got disassociated, but I actually had sex. But, that's a different story.
Okay, so let's talk about so they used to have in Los Angeles, where we grew up, they had the circuit assemblies at Dodger Stadium at that time.
Yeah.
And we would all, like, the word was out that, like, if you were young and single, you would meet up at the blue level.
Oh, yeah.
So you could meet friends or meet other people's friends or get introduced around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a meat market. And that was the place to be. You would try to not sit with your parents at the assembly at that age. And you're 15, 16, 17, 18. And you would go sit up on the blue level so you could just meet all the other single young people. And the parents didn't really know this was 100% going on. We were kind of covert about it.
Right. I mean, that's how you found out about all the cool parties, was on the blue level.
Right. And then there would be like, after the assembly day dinner somewhere in a restaurant, you would meet up or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember some of those parties were so bad. Like, it got to the point where like the elders said you had to have chaperones at your parties, and then they made a rule in my congregation that the chaperones had to be elders. So you had to find an elder that would be willing to come to your party, and you wouldn't necessarily tell them that people were going to be coming from other congregations.
This is where we were a little bit different. Like the parties I went to, there was no chaperones there. They were, maybe somebody had their own apartment already, or their parents were out of town.
Yeah, I remember when I got my own apartment when I was 19. That was like a game changer. You had your own apartment too when we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you do whatever you can to get yourself out there in the world and try to feel like you're a part of something.
Yeah. So I remember going to parties where they actually had sign-in sheets, and you had to was saying, I remember there were parties where they had like sign-in sheets and you had to say what congregation you were from, and your name. And
I didn't
then
go to no
we
parties
started putting
like
like
that.
fake names in like other people's congregations, so that if something happened at that party, they couldn't figure out which elders to call you for your congregation. Anyways, that was silly, but wait. So you said you were dissociated before we met, and I don't think I knew that when we met. What was that process like for you?
That was really weird. Like that was. It was like a family friend. They were visiting. Her and I were like the same age. Yeah, so then that happened. And then, like at that point, I was still confused and felt real guilty. And, you know, I had done something wrong, even though there was nothing wrong with what I did. I was just being a regular human. And then it was terrible, yeah. And then, like the difference, like, you know, like, because I wasn't baptized, because I wasn't sure what, you know, what direction I was going or whatnot. So then, you know, just disassociated. But the outcome, you're treated the exact same. I had to go through all that process of making sure I never ever missed a meeting. I wasn't allowed to go out in service, but I had to show up and pretend like I was going to go out in service.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like anything I could do to prove that I was, you know, capable of being in good standing with them, you know, like
Yeah. So
show my remorse or something. Yeah.
So did you get baptized later?
Actually, yes.
Yeah, because you're baptized.
Right.
So, okay, so that's interesting. So before you get baptized, you can't be disfellowshipped.
No.
So that's like good info. Like if you're thinking about getting baptized, don't do it. Because once you get baptized, they can disfellowship you.
Yeah, it's sort of like the difference between like if you plan on doing some crimes, do it before you turn 18.
Yeah.
Because that shit'll get expunged.
So I got baptized when I was 16, full water immersion at a circuit assembly. How did you get baptized?
The full water thing, but
But you'd already come back from being disassociated.
yeah, right.
Which is like shunning light or something, like because you're not baptized yet. They just don't hang out with you because you're not on the path.
Well, I mean, yeah, nobody could talk to me. It was the exact same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, family life at home, you know, I mean, I think I was still dealt with, you know, as part of the family, but outside of the house, you know.
Yeah. Your parents sent you away at one point.
Well, yeah.
Was that after you were baptized or before?
No, before.
Oh, before.
Yeah.
They sent you to go live with an uncle in another state.
Yeah, like I was all like
rebellious.
I was bored, but I mean, rebellious is one way to put it. Right, I was always pushing the boundaries, and some of that has never changed. I suppose. I mean, now I'm just a little more adult about the boundaries. I know which ones not to push.
Now it's like we're gonna get eaten by mosquitoes out here. Okay, well, so that could be a whole other episode.
Okay. About
the shunning part, but I just kind of wanted to talk about like how it was being a teenager in the religion and like how we met, and then I remember at that time. So like I thought you looked super dapper. We had there was this way that we would wear vintage, because you know you have to dress a certain way in the religion. Your parents expect you to wear like a knee-length dress and a suit and tie, and so we started wearing like vintage clothing and going into kind of like a rockabilly kind of look, right? Or like a retro style.
Retro. Yeah, everybody sort of, I don't know about everybody. There was definitely like cliques as far as, you know, outfits go. But a lot of people, I mean, just anything they could do to express themselves without going too far.
Right. So, like, in order to be an individual, you still had to wear a dress that was knee length, but how could we push that boundary to express ourselves as teenagers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, your sisters were wearing the JCPenney dresses, and we were shopping at, like,
Aardvarks.
Vintage thrift stores in Hollywood, right?
Yes.
To try to just be cooler. So there was this, like, covert rebellion happening. Like, we were still going to all the meetings, we were dressing within the guidelines, but we...
Again?
So, but we had a look, right? So it was kind of it was a way of being covert within the organization. And I feel like that's like, that might have to be a whole separate episode too, but it kind of developed our psyche in a way of kind of being in the world but not being part of it. That's what they used to always tell us as witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
But then we started being in the witnesses but not really being part of it, right? Like,
yeah, right. Like I said, like when I was going to other people's circuit assembly at Dodger Stadium, I was only going there to meet people. I was, if you know, like during the talks or whatever, I was roaming the hallways or out in the parking lot.
yeah, not paying attention. You weren't following along with your Bible scriptures.
I don't even think I brought a Bible with me, to tell you the truth.
All right, so let's skip forward. You and I started living together.
Yes, we did.
And we had our own apartment together, and our parents didn't know. And then my mom found out.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to be like, oh, he just left some stuff over here, you know, like, but then she was like, you guys better get married before the elders find out. Is kind of how I remember her saying it.
Well, I think it was more for her benefit, maybe, because neither one of us were going to meetings or participating in any of that anymore. We were completely doing our thing. I know you still believed, but wasn't participating.
Yeah, I was, because I had a disabled sister,
Right. Oh,
that
Linda,
I still
of
needed
course.
to be able to interact with. My mom had already married a non-believer, so she was already being shunned.
But still
But
holding
she was
on.
still in it. She would still go to
Yes.
all the meetings and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of my sister's situation, she was older than me, but she was severely disabled. I needed to be able to interact with her, so I was trying not to like rock the boat or let
Mm-hmm.
anybody know that I wasn't following the rules anymore, even though I wasn't really going to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But then my mom found out we were living together. I remember coming home from work and being like, my mom thinks we should get married or we're going to get disfellowshipped.
And to me, I was like, okay, we're going to get this fellowship. But I know for you, like, that wasn't an option. So
yeah, you're like, okay. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll get married. And you're like, okay, we'll get disfellowshipped.
And then, you know, but we weren't ready to get married. We were just ready to...
Yeah, we were like, I was 20. I was barely 20.
Yeah, right. You know, we were barely, like, dipping our toe into the, you know, the worldly world.
Yeah, so my mom made us a reservation at a hotel in Las Vegas.
Well, it took at least a few months before we actually went ahead with it.
No, I think it was pretty quick.
Pretty quick?
It was like maybe a month.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, she was persistent. It just seems like it went a lot longer. Like, every time, like, maybe...
I feel like that whole period of our lives, like, it overshadowed, like, even though we were only married for, like, 2 years in total, it feels like 100 years for some reason.
So much happened.
Yeah.
So much
Plus, we were
happened.
young. I think things that happen to you when you're younger just, like, color your life.
Yeah,
Because you've had
that's
that
true.
experience with you longer.
Yeah. Now, days or years seem like weeks.
Right, yeah. So anyway, so my mom gave us my sister's car keys, and she put a hotel room on her credit card.
She gave us the credit card too, didn't she?
I don't think so. I think she just booked the room on her card, and then we figured out we could charge stuff to the room, and it would go on her credit card without asking her.
Well, we both had jobs at the time too,
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
weren't like
The gas money and stuff. So we went to Vegas to try to get married.
Circus, baby.
we had to get a permit. We didn't know what we were doing. We had to get like a license. We had to stand this long ass line because it was Valentine's weekend.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And you were like, we're not getting married on Valentine's weekend. We're getting married on the 13th.
Yeah,
I'm
the
like,
13th, yeah.
Oh my God. So then we ended up getting married. We were looking for a place where we could get married, like super, we wanted it to be so over the top ridiculous. Like we were looking for like an Elvis impersonator or something.
Right.
And we couldn't find anything.
Like we were trying to have fun with it. Like if we're gonna do this, let's, you know, I mean, we can't have that perfect witness wedding that you always hoped for, and
Right? Because, yeah, so cut to the chase. We got married in the drive-thru in Las Vegas.
yes, we did.
Anyways, not wearing proper wedding attire at all.
I was still looking good. You were looking good.
But like legitimately growing up, we all thought we were going to have the Kingdom Hall wedding, right? Where
Yeah, right.
the whole congregation would be at the Kingdom Hall. We'd walk down the aisle of Kingdom Hall, and an elder would marry us on. So anyway, so we had this Kingdom Hall wedding fantasy that we thought we were going to have growing up, and that was all shattered by this point. Like, we've given up that dream. Like, we're just like, fuck it, let's just get married in the drive-thru of Las Vegas. Right?
Yeah, we paid for a witness.
Yeah, we didn't have anybody
a marriage
with
witness,
us
not a Jehovah Witness.
And in Nevada, you have to have a witness. I remember, that's why I forgot that. They took a Polaroid of us. We were like in the car window.
Yeah,
that's our wedding picture.
Right. Can I get fries with that?
Oh my god. So that was kind of our, like, we were already living together. It's not like we didn't want, I don't know, we just didn't think of getting married until, like, it was kind of forced upon us.
Yeah.
Out of, like, some kind of fear-based decision. All right, so let's talk about, so then a year later I got pregnant.
Yes, you did.
You were already a raging alcoholic by this point. I mean, you pretty much the whole time I knew you, but I think I just thought, like, yeah, everyone who's like 19 or 20 is drinking.
That's what happened.
But, like, you had some extreme upbringings that probably pushed you into alcoholism. So I got pregnant and you became suicidal. Do I talk about that?
I was bored with everything.
Okay.
And then that, those thoughts, those feelings led to other thoughts and other feelings, and it's real confusing. I mean, to be brought up that way, and yeah.
So it was a pretty serious time, right? So I was trying to figure out, I'm having a baby. I already didn't have the Kingdom Hall wedding. I need to be with my family and community while I'm raising a child. So I started going back to meetings. I even had like a big Kingdom Hall baby shower. Your whole family came. My family was there. But like a few months into my pregnancy, you had committed suicide.
Attempted, obviously.
Well, I didn't know that at the time. I found you like dead practically. And you were in a coma for like 3 days. And I was pregnant. And then we got through that. Turns out there was a lot of like repressed memories that came through for you that were triggered by the pregnancy. But I was just like, how do I be a mom at 20 years old? I was 22 when Skylar was born.
Yeah.
So, like, how do I be a mom with an alcoholic, suicidal husband and this weird family dynamic where I was pretending to go to the meetings and be in the religion even though it didn't feel authentic to me at that time. I was kind of like in this weird place. But you and I started through that experience together and having a baby together. We started talking about more philosophical ideas. You'd already kind of processed a lot more than I had.
I had looked into, everything from Hindus to aliens.
I remember one time you told me, I don't know if it was that you said, I don't believe in God, or you said, I don't believe in the Bible. But I just remember it being shocking to me. And I remember calling your mom and being like, he doesn't believe in God. and like, I don't know why I told your mom that, but it was just like, I needed her to know like what crazy situation I was in, having this baby with this guy who was not believing in what we were supposed to be believing in, and how was I going to manage that?
I remember like it was like I wanted to like convey these new thoughts and ideas to you, and it was, but I didn't want to offend you, like, because I still know whatever about your situation with Linda and your family, and
yet Linda's my sister that I needed to stay in contact with.
Yes, and like I wasn't even concerned about the repercussions of my family not liking me anymore, because as far as I'm concerned, they never liked me to begin with. So, yeah.
So you said something to me that I think was like a light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, you're like, Jennifer, why is the Bible true? And I'm like, well, because God wrote it. And you're like, well, how do we know God wrote it? And I'm like, because it says so in the Bible. And then I heard myself. And then you're like, circular argument. And I was like, oh, fuck, is that really true? Like, we only think God wrote the Bible because the Bible says God wrote it? And then I had, like, a whole, like, mind explosion. I was like, oh, there's no, like, outside corroborating evidence.
That's where faith comes in.
And our whole belief system was based on this It's like our whole belief system was based on this very strict biblical interpretation of.
And then the
whatever.
constant reminders, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
daily, I mean.
Yeah, because we went to meetings like 3 times a week and studied and prepared.
Then the personal Bible studies and.
Yeah. I was talking about that on my last episode a little bit about, it was like you didn't have a day to not think about it.
Well, your family was a little bit stricter in that way than mine. Like you did. I think you did a lot more, especially with your dad being an elder, and then, I mean, later on in life when he wasn't there for you. But the, like those beliefs and whatnot, you know, carried on in your family. But that gave you that gave you some freedoms that I didn't have, whereas my family wasn't so strict as far as like so much extra. Like there would be, you know, maybe 2 days a week where it wasn't like surrounding the religion. But with that being said, like I was never allowed to like hang out with anybody who wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. Like there was no playing in the neighborhood for me.
I was thinking, so we did play with like neighborhood kids, but I was thinking about how did that evolve? Because that would have not normally have been allowed. There were witnesses that lived next door to us that had kids our age for a few years. And so we would play with them, and then we were just in this habit of always playing in the front yard riding bikes. Mm-hmm. And they were just renting. So when they moved away, other kids moved in that weren't witnesses, and we still had this habit, and my mom already was in the habit of locking us outside for all day. And we were Gen Xers, right? So like we were that generation, but we were kind of on our own. And so then we just kept playing in the neighborhood with the kids in the front yard. It's like, as long as they didn't come in the house too much, or, you know, we said we were witnessing to them, right? And then those kids got to know the other kids around the neighborhood. So then we started to know all the kids around the neighborhood through those kids. And we all went to public school together. Mm-hmm. So we weren't allowed to like do birthday parties or sleepovers at anybody's house or anything, but we could just, like, when my mom locked us out of the house to play outside, we would just find the kids that were already there in the front of the house.
See, for me, my thing was bicycles, because I had to be by myself. You know, I mean, I couldn't have any other friends, so it was just me and my bicycle. And then that became a career up until...
Oh yeah, you were riding professional mountain bikes when I met you, and you were working in bike shops. I thought that.
Yeah.
And then you got hit by a car, and that.
And then everything went way crazy, right? Like around the same.
One outlet.
Yes, right. And then it was just you and me, and me stuck in my head, and you know.
Yeah. All right. So how many? I was going to ask you, like, my family. There's 4 generations that were raised Jehovah's Witnesses, or that were. My
passed down.
great grandparents were Jehovah's Witnesses. Like in your family, I know your grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness.
And she was the first. And then she had 13 kids, don't forget.
Right.
And so a lot of the older ones
weren't Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, they were already way set in their ways. And then
she became.
Right.
So your mom and her siblings that were close in her age were all Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh yeah, right. And so then, like at family gatherings and stuff, it was mostly just the ones that were witnesses, the ones, you know, that were young enough.
Yeah, I never met any of your mom's siblings that weren't witnesses.
Yeah, right.
So like you would have big family gatherings and all the cousins and everything, they were all witnesses.
All of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was some that weren't, but they were never like invited to these, you know, these gatherings, of course, you know. But my mom, like, she was young, and then she got pregnant, and then she got disfellowshipped.
Oh, that's right, because she was young when she had you, and she was disfellowshipped, but then she got back in.
Yeah.
And raised you.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then married one of her brother's friends who was a witness, and.
Oh, I didn't realize he was a friend of her brother.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so your stepdad raised you.
There was no blue level back then.
you had to marry somebody who knew somebody.
Of course.
So So your stepdad, his mom, I know I met your grandmother on his side.
Mm-hmm.
She was in it, but her husband wasn't.
Correct.
So was she the first one in her family that was in it?
I don't know.
And then your stepdad had siblings that were in it.
Yeah, both his sisters, yes.
Yeah. So you're basically like third generation on your mom and stepdad's side.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's... When your parents are raised in it, it's like there's no other reality because everything they know is what they...
From birth.
Yeah. And they're raising you in it. So anyway, so shortly after our son was born, you were alcoholic, drug addict, suicidal, and I had this new baby to take care of. So we split. And you went back to Minnesota to find your biological dad, who you've never met.
Or
You
seen
had,
a
like,
picture
an
of, or nothing.
Existential crisis moment.
Mm-hmm.
So you went and started a new life in Minnesota with siblings and a father you had never known in your whole life.
Right, yeah.
That's a thing too, like a little off topic, but like my sister who was disabled, she lost touch with her mother because my dad, when he became a witness, took the kids and raised them as witnesses and then cut them off from even their own mother. And so there's a lot of that, I think, where kids are cut off even from the parent that's a non-believer once the parents start raising them as Jehovah's Witnesses. So you had a whole family you didn't know about.
Yeah.
So you went and started a new life. You had another relationship after me. You had more kids. I also got into another relationship, lived with somebody for like 10 years, had 2 more kids, and then I ended up marrying him, and we were married for 15 years. So I got into a long-term relationship. You were in another relationship. So it's been kind of a long road with both of us going in separate directions outside of the religion.
Right.
And having new relationships outside the religion and kids.
Mm-hmm.
But we always kind of try to support each other.
Always.
When we could, right? Like you were battling some things, some demons, but not literal demons.
Nope. They were little blue demons.
And I was just trying to like get on with my life. And my husband after you was not a witness. So
No.
He was like all science guy, and I was hearing all this stuff that I never heard before. And I went to college and I took anthropology classes, and I took Western religious thought, and I just learned all these things that were very different than
And
what we were
your
told.
sister had passed on, Linda.
Yeah, Linda eventually passed on, and then I just stopped even pretending.
Right,
I
and
had
then
no
that
reason.
finally you were able to like, okay, now let me process these things in my own way. Let me see, let me really explore and open up to all these other possibilities
Like when
out there.
she died, it was like so heartbreaking for me, and at the same time I was like, oh, and I never have to go to the memorial again.
That's right, yeah, like I never have to do this, I never have to do that. I can
Yeah.
like try to be myself now, find myself and be that person.
Yeah, I'd already been doing my own thing for a long time, but I just didn't want to get disfellowshipped because then she would be able to
Right.
speak to me. And I was her caretaker. I was her primary caretaker at that point. She was on a ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole other episode we should do about how she wasn't allowed to have blood transfusions and how
Yeah.
that affected her.
And Linda was so amazing.
The elders actually got power of attorney over her at the end of her life, so I couldn't make decisions for her. That was crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's bring it up to the present time. How are we both sitting here on the island of Maui together? So I had bought a house here. I bought this house, actually,
This one?
before the pandemic, but I wasn't living here full time yet. And then somehow during the pandemic, you had gotten sober and were doing all this interpersonal work and ended up visiting your parents who had moved to New Mexico.
Yes.
And then there was like a miscommunication, and somehow we got connected and talked on the phone after we hadn't spoken in years.
It had been quite a while, right. I mean, even though we always had each other's back, it wasn't like we were on the phone constantly or anything like that. But anytime anything came up, then, yeah. And then this came up.
Right.
And
Like, I
then-
remember we connected like in 2013 when Skylar graduated from high school.
Right.
But from 2013 to 2019, we had, like, our kid was graduated from high school. You already had established your own relationship with him. And so we didn't need to talk about kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward 2020, pandemic.
Yeah.
There was a miscommunication. Your ex-girlfriend called me
Mm-hmm.
and said, Jeremy needs a place to go, which wasn't actually true.
No.
But I called you.
Right.
And then we started talking.
Right, like, I'm not sure what I was looking for going to New Mexico and spending time with them. So I'm not sure what I was looking for when I went there, but I certainly didn't find it. I was there for a few weeks, maybe a month, a little more. I'm not exactly sure. It was too long, however long it was. And so then I was just going to go back to Minnesota. And then you were like, I got this house in Maui. It looks like the shit's about to hit the fan with this pandemic thing. Maybe you might want to go there. And I was like,
I remember your stepdad.
Sure.
Your stepdad was like, the end of the world is coming. I'll buy him a ticket to anywhere, and so he paid for your flight.
Yeah,
so
right.
Just like get out of
Get
his
out
house.
of here. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, they were already asking me, you know, like, are you one of the apostate now? Like, not that I know of. I mean, you know, I haven't believed in God or, you know, anything for years, you know.
Decades.
I mean,
It's interesting, like, contrasting your family with my family. Like, we talked a little bit about growing up as different. Like, my family was very devout, but there was some areas where we were able to go to public school and have neighborhood friends.
mm-hmm.
And your family was not that devout, but they were really strict on some of the extraneous rules.
Oh, right.
But, like, your family, they were heavy drinkers.
Yeah.
And my family didn't drink.
No.
They were abusive, very emotionally abusive. Like,
Right.
I had very narcissistic, codependent, like, patterns in my family line. But your family was, like, just, like, always a party. There was a lot of drinking going on, and that turned later into, like, opioids. And so there was a whole different kind of dysfunction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, quoting scriptures, like, I'll never forget, spare the rod and spoil the child, like that.
Oh, yeah, that's the go-to for...
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you can spank your child at any given time for any reason because of that scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, heavy spanking happened in my family. There was, like, a leather belt sitting always out, visible. Like, we would be spanked with that belt. It was like a constant threat.
Leroy was much more creative. You know, like, there's a 2x4
stepdad.
over there. Bring that to me.
Oh, we had switches off trees. We had all kinds of creative spanking mechanisms, for sure. So you're like, yeah, I'll go to Maui and hunker down during the pandemic. So you came out here before I did.
You're right.
Just to, like, secure the property since we didn't know what was going to happen. And we were hearing from our realtor that it might get a little bit lawless over here.
Yeah, it was the very last airplane. Like, I had...
Before they had the two-week quarantine.
Right, yeah, the original flight got canceled.
I remember, so I had a caretaker here.
Yeah.
And I was like, pick up Jeremy from the airport, take him straight to, like, Costco or Walmart or somewhere to get groceries, and then bring him back to the house.
Yeah.
And then we were talking, and you were telling me, like, the caretaker was actually, like, extorting money, like, all this stuff, so we ended up getting rid of the caretaker.
Yeah.
And then I packed up my whole house into a shipping container, and my kids and my husband and the dog, we all came over here by June because we realized, at first we thought the pandemic was just going to be like a month or something.
Yeah, right.
And then we came over here in June, and it was still serious lockdown, and we had to quarantine for 2 weeks when we got here, and nobody could work. And so I was like, okay, we're on this beautiful property. It's a pandemic. Like, let's just all hunker down together and until it breaks, So that's what we did. So it was like you, my husband, my 2 younger daughters, the dog. We all were living here on this property. Fortunately, it's a large property. You get along fine with my ex-husband, now ex-husband, but at the time we were married. And so we were all just, like, here, like, caretaking this property, like, doing our thing, fixing the roof and just doing some deferred maintenance on the property. It was kind of a wild time. And then you liked it here. You're like, I'm never leaving.
Now, yeah.
But you don't live here anymore.
No, not
own
here,
place.
right. Well, just around the block.
Yeah. So that was kind of crazy. So now one of your daughters from your other relationship lives here with me.
Right.
She's amazing. I love her. She's half sister with our son.
Mm-hmm.
And then our son, it's so crazy that all his growing up, you lived in Minnesota, I lived in California. So sometimes he would come visit you in Minnesota.
Right.
When you were able to have him.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a few years there when you were struggling, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And you would come to California every once in a while. And
Right.
You came out when my sister died.
Mm-hmm.
when you came out to California when my sister died, you brought your kids with your new woman.
You're right, yeah.
You guys never got married, but yeah, so I met your kids when they were littler.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that lives here now, I had known her when she was littler. So we've always supported each other and kind of tried to co-parent, even through like drug addiction, behavior issues, you know, like dysfunctional families, being shunned by our families, like so many crazy things that because our families are both in that religion and how we were raised and how we adapted and coped with all of that, like still finding a way to support each other. And I tend to, I think, try to support people that were raised how we were raised in general.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I feel like, a kinship with them.
Well, you've always been so helpful, always.
But I feel like especially like, you know, like we get how we were raised. Other people don't get that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's just the Jehovah Witnesses either. I think there's a lot of religions that are, you know, there's the Amish and there's the Mormons and there's the, so it's not like it's strictly that we were raised Jehovah Witness. I think there's probably people who were raised in very dogmatic or fundamentalist religions.
Oh,
have
right.
Similar,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Maybe not as strict, but they're simply just religions and not a cult. There's
Right.
that difference.
There's a definition there. Anyways, well, thank you for sharing all of this. I hope it's helpful for people who are watching to hear.
At the very least, entertaining.
Right? There's so many other topics that we could like kind of go off into tangents on, so maybe we'll have to do another episode later.
I suppose.
You'll have to find a new shirt that's like, I don't know, not Smurfs. All right, awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.